understand just why you wanna keep me guessing.
Hi BookTube, it's Missy, and today I'm here to share with you guys my 2018 end of the year book survey. This was created by Jamie from Perpetual Pages. The last time I did this was in 2015. It took a really long time to put this list together, so I haven't done it since then, but I decided I would try it today. Let's get into all of the survey questions. The first one is, how many books did you read? I've read 84, which isn't amazing for me. My very first year here on BookTube, I read 100 more books than I did this year. I didn't read a lot of graphic novels this year, and that also bumps up my reading number if I do read a lot of graphic novels in a year. I only read like 5 this year. Rereads, I did read 3.5, so I reread Bad Unicorn to my children. I had read this in the summer of 2017, I believe, and then I reread it last year. And then I also reread Ready Player One, so that way we could watch the movie. The movie is definitely not as good as the book. And then I reread Meg. Again, I read this to my children, so that way we could see the movie. Here is a picture of us in front of the poster. And I am currently rereading The Martian to my children by Andy Weir, and this one we are just about done. We only have about this many pages left. We do 1 chapter a night, so that'll probably be done maybe within the week, and then again we'll re-watch the movie. Next portion of the survey is best in books. So for my favorite or best read book this year, The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. This was a really hard decision. Normally I know immediately what book I liked the best when I'm doing these videos, and I read a lot of good books this year. So I'm going to put this one as the top, only because there were so many twists in this book, and then the ending was the best. Yeah. It made sense, and I really enjoyed it, and I never knew who the killer was. This is my first time with Peter Swanson, and he's definitely a new author favorite, so I highly recommend this one. The next question is, book you were excited about and thought you were going to love more, but didn't. Here's a picture of Artemis. I needed to take a picture of all the books on my bed, and so I printed out all the book covers that I don't own anymore. Either I borrowed from the library or I've already given away. So yay, a picture! I like these, that way I can hold something. Artemis is by Andy Weir. The Martian was my favorite book in like 2016, I believe. I couldn't imagine Andy Weir not writing the next book, you know, his sequel, if you will, to be amazing. And this was just so bad. It's a heist book on the moon. The character is female. Her name is Jazz, and she is whiny and complaining, and she's super smart and has lots of things going for her, but she would rather do the least amount of work. And she's getting paid a ton of money to sabotage this corporation on the moon, and it backfires, and there's death, and there's, you know, this conspiracy thing, and there's like some kind of like gang that is on the moon like trying to take her down. It was a disaster. I absolutely hated it, and so I gave it away. The next question, most surprising, good or bad, book you read. I will have to go with Universal Harvester by John Darnell. This is categorized as a horror on Goodreads. This cover, picture of the cover, is amazing. And it looks like, you know, when you got too close to the TV when you were little, it looked really weird and exactly like that. Anyways, the premise of this book is old VHS tapes. And so I was thinking about all these horror movies that I have watched with VHS tapes, and I was thinking that was going just to be absolutely fantastic. And it's not a horror whatsoever. It's like a drama almost about a woman who loses her mom when she's little, but the book is broken up in weird ways. So that is like the main string throughout the entire book, is this woman is upset that her mom disappeared when she was little. And then so as an adult, she clips in all of these weird like video segments into already made VHS tapes for some reason. And a boy who works at a video store finds them and is confused and tries to figure out why this woman is doing it and whether or not he should be concerned for the people in the movies. And then at the very end, we are like 20 years into the future, and somebody buys a house with all these VHS tapes in. And it's seriously, it's not a horror. I don't recommend this book whatsoever. I don't even know why it was written. And I try not to be rude about books, but this one was bad. Next question is a book that you pushed the most for people to read in 2018. Now, there are a few books that I was really pushing hard on my channel. The first one being Bad Unicorn. This is a middle grade book. It's a trilogy. It's written by Plate F. Clark. This is his only written series. He hasn't written any other books after this, and it is so good. I mean, not only is this cover just absolutely fantastic. I mean, we have a unicorn spearing a squirrel here. The unicorn is eating human bones. It's just fantastic. The backs of all of these books are brilliant because you get a little glimpse of what's going to happen within the book. We have the Tree of Woe. These cats can catch on fire. We have a whole boat of squirrels. We have squirrel soldiers. It's so good. And it's funny because this is like almost the end of the book, so it's a foreshadowing. Really, 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 really like this series, so I pushed this a lot. If you like funny comic fantasy books with fairy tale creatures like, you know, unicorns and dwarves and all that stuff, I would read this. All right, the next book that I pushed on everyone was Meg by Steve Alton. Now, this is Erica's favorite book, and I will leave her channel down below. It's The Perks of Books. She's been pushing this book for years, and I finally picked it up last year. Absolutely loved it. It was my favorite book of 2017, and then so of course I had to read it to my children, and then the movie was coming out, so that was fantastic. It is the best blockbuster book I've ever read. It has a killer megalodon. It has a little bit of a love story. It has revenge and fighting on the seas and multiple deaths, and it's good. It's really good. And then the last books I really pushed in 2018 was the Dark Tower series. Now, this is book 2. I always say go through the Gunslinger as fast as you can, and then really delve into the Dark Tower series after that on book 2, which is the drawing of the 3. This is when the book really starts. I know people are like, well, what's the point of having to read an entire book before you get to the good parts? I liked the first book, but a lot of people don't. And so because my tastes are different than others, I always say just push through the first one, get to the second one. This is when everything starts happening and making more sense. It's just really, really good. The Dark Tower series is 7 books, or 8 if you want to put The Wind Through the Keyhole in the mix. It's a fantasy, sci-fi, western with a little bit of alternate history. It's got time travel. It's got everything. It is a genre-less book because it has every genre in it. There is a great love, like, you know, a relationship, a really good romantic relationship, an amazing non-romantic relationship. There's a little meta because Stephen King is addressed in these books. It's just really, really good. And if you enjoy Stephen King, all of his books tie in to the Dark Tower series at one time or another. Either the book is talked about within the series, or the characters come back and make cameos within the books. It's really, really cool. I absolutely love them. And all these books are illustrated. So yeah, there's pictures within them all. See? That's the man in black. Oh no, is that Eddie? It might be Eddie. Anyways, really, really liked. The next question is the best series you started this year. And I would have to say Every Heart a Doorway or The Wayward Children by Shannon Maguire. I did read books 1 and 2. The second book is Down Among the Sticks and Bones. I did purchase Beneath the Sugar Sky, which I have not read yet. And then the fourth book actually comes out in the next couple of days, which I've already pre-ordered. So I definitely recommend these. It's a cross between a YA and adult. It's written in adult fashion, but they have YA characters in it. And it's about these children who come from different fantastical worlds, and they can no longer go back. They've been like kicked out of their worlds. And so they're living in this house to learn how to cope with being ordinary again. So I really, really enjoyed them. The series that I really enjoyed this year was The Strain by Guillermo del Toro and Chuck Hogan. I know I talked about this one. This one was a YA / like adult, but more towards the YA. Whereas this is definitely adult. This is a vampire trilogy written by a director who is amazing, and he wrote this book fantastically. It's a very good, dark vampire story with no romance. So if you are interested in reading more vampire books, this was a good start to a trilogy. The next question is the best sequel I read in 2018, and that is Fluff Dragon. This is the sequel to Bad Unicorn. Like I said, these covers are fantastic. Like, it's such a fun middle grade. Please pick these up. They're so good. The next question is the best ending of a series that you read this year. And I didn't read many series. I usually read a lot of series within a year, and the only ones that I actually completed were middle grade. So the next book is another middle grade. We have Gustav, Gloom, and the Castle of Fear by Adam Troy Castro, illustrated by Kristen Margiotta. This is a 6-book series. I thought it was 7, but it's 6 books, and it's about Fernie and Gustav Gloom. Gustav is a half shadowling, which means that he is a half shadow creature, half human, and they're neighbors, and they go on all these adventures not killing, but trying to defeat these dark people, like dark shadow people from the Dark Country. Their main goal is to defeat Lord Obsidian, who lives in the Dark Country, and he keeps bringing more monsters and characters to try to capture these kids. And their whole, like in every single book, they're defeating more dark creatures until they reach the end where they are to defeat Lord Obsidian. I really, really like it, and these have really high vocabulary words for middle grade. So if you want to share a book that will help with your kids' vocabulary, I highly recommend these books. They're really good. They're sweet, but they're dark, and it's full of friendship and family, and that's really good too. Next question is favorite new author, and I kind of already said that, The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. New favorite author. I read a lot of new authors this year, but not that many that really stood out. These two were definitely my favorites, where I will be auto-buying their books from now on. I know Shannon wrote other books prior to this Wayward Children series, and they are also supernatural, paranormal in nature. So I definitely want to give her other stuff a try. And then, of course, Peter Swanson writes thrillers, adult thrillers, so I definitely want to read more of his stuff. He has another book coming out this year as well. The next question is best book from a genre you don't typically read, or is out of your comfort zone. Now, that is going to be The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. I don't read literary fiction very often, maybe one a year, and I really enjoyed this book. It's about a child who is on the autism spectrum, who is trying to solve a mystery, and along the way we learn how he views the world, you know, through the eyes of a kid with autism. So really, really enjoyed that one. Next question is the most action-packed book that you read this year, or unput-downable. And that is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. I read this in January of 2018. Picked it up because of the hype. Everyone loved this book a few years back, and I found this for $1 at my local bookstore, my local library bookstore. And since it was $1, I decided to give it a go. And it was not only unput-downable, but definitely shocked me in the fact that I didn't see this twist at all, and I started crying in the middle of the book. Like, that was unexpected. There was no buildup of emotions. I just started bawling. And so that was just awesome in my opinion. If a author can not trick me, but have me going along unawares and then hit me like that, was really, really interesting to go through, because normally that doesn't happen to me while I'm reading. So definitely a good book. The next question is a book that you are most likely going to reread next year, and that is I Am Ending Things by Ian Reid. I borrowed this from the library because Penelope over at Penelope's Picks, I'll leave her channel link down below. This was one of her favorite reads of 2018, and she gave it 5 stars. And so I was trying to find books for my Around the Year in 52 books for one of the categories, and so I decided to pick this up. And it's a really short book, so it's very easy to reread. But not only that, it's written in a way where you don't know what's going on, and then the ending is like this big twist, and you're thinking, oh no, I need to go back and reread this again now that I know what happens at the end. But it's about a woman who's on a road trip with her boyfriend to meet his parents, and the whole time she's thinking about breaking up with them. And you think, oh, that's the premise of the book, but it's better than that. Definitely pick this up. I'm not going to say anything else. Just know that a girl and a boy are driving in a car to his parents' house. It's a pretty long trip, and the whole time she's thinking about breaking up with them. Really good. To buy that book, by the way. It's on my Amazon wish list. Alright, question is your favorite book cover of 2018. And again, Bad Unicorn. I find a lot of good covers are colorful. Well, for me, they're either colorful or they have illustrations. I hate pictures with actual people on the cover. I do appreciate books that are just font. but mostly I like anything with some kind of cartoonish illustration on the cover, and this one is amazing. The majority of my favorite book covers are either middle grade or YA, and yeah, just I absolutely love these. Any one of these could have been my favorites. This one's a little boring. The Good Ogre is pretty good too, but this one's definitely my favorite. I know, out of 84 books, you'd think I'd have more books to share with you guys, but the next question is favorite character in a book. And yeah, my most memorable character is Dirk from this series. We have Maximilian, who is the main character, and then he has his sidekick Dirk, who, when I was reading these books out loud to my children, I gave him like a laid-back surfer kind of accent, and he's so funny. The friend is so funny. He always has these like one-liners that he says throughout the book. At one point, because he's so good at video games, he knows that there needs to be certain categories. So we need to have a tank, we need to have healers, we need to have DPS. And so at one point when they're trying to create an army to defeat the bad unicorn, Dirk convinces all these little fairy tale creatures that he is a god and that he needs to create these healers so that way they can go into battle. It's seriously so funny. The next question was a little hard for me to come up with something, and it's the most beautifully written book. Now, I didn't read poetry this year, and I didn't read any like really heavy fantasy that would be beautifully written, but I did read The Hazel Wood by Melissa Albert, and this is a fairy tale kind of retelling. It's about a girl who is searching for her mother that has been stolen, and in order to find her, she needs to go through this mysterious fantasy wood to reach this house, which is like a doorway into the fantasy realm. But it's written with all these dark, twisted fairy tales. I don't believe the fairy tales are real. They may be. I'm not familiar with them. But I really enjoyed the dark fairy tale aspect of the book more than the main character looking for her parent. Does that make sense? Like, that whole journey of her searching for her mom wasn't as exciting as reading all the dark fairy tales that come along with this story. And that was beautifully written. The next question is the most thought-provoking or life-changing book that you read. And that would have to be Wild by Cheryl Strayed. This is a nonfiction memoir of Cheryl's journey on the Pacific Crest Trail. Now, it's thought-provoking because it makes me ponder what I would need to go backpacking. Life-changing because I really wanted to do this trail and it is intense, so I probably won't. Maybe some portions of it, but definitely not the entire thing. Definitely worth the read if you like nonfiction and journeys of self-reflection and a character that, you know, is female. So, women journeys, if you are interested in those kinds of things. She's definitely badass. The next question is a book you cannot believe you waited so long to read. And that is Misery by Stephen King. Now, I know this book has been out forever. The movie has been out forever, but I was never really interested in reading it until 2018. And as I was reading this, I realized that this is now in my top 5 of Stephen King reads. This was so good, and it kept me on the edge of my seat anxiety-wise the entire time. We have the main character's name is Paul Sheldon, and Annie Wilkes? Yeah, Annie Wilkes. So we have our main character, Paul Sheldon, who is a writer. He is driving through a snowstorm and crashes his car. And then we have Annie Wilkes, who is his #1 fan, just so happens to drive by and see that he's in this car accident. She saves him, brings him back to health, but at the same time, she's also keeping him captive in her house until he rewrites her favorite series, which is Misery. Such a good book, and if you like thrillers, this is definitely a thriller. I would pick it up. It's amazing. I haven't watched the movie yet. I really need to watch this movie. I know that Kathy Bates, I think, won an award for this movie. So good. But there's a difference between the scenes with the foot, so I'm nervous to watch it in the movie, because in the book it was it was intense and more graphic than the tiny bits that I've seen in like trailers, like video trailers, movie trailers. So pick up this book, definitely. Question is your favorite passage quote from a book? Now this one again was really hard for me, and I went through all of the books that I read trying to think of something that really stuck with me, like passage wise or quote wise, and Pet Sematary comes to mind because the main character keeps telling himself that he owns the bad that's happening to him, that he grew it and now he has to tend it and he owns it, and that just makes sense. Whatever you do in life, whatever choices you make, you need to own those choices. And I really enjoyed that quote from the book. I can't tell you the exact quote because for some reason all of my updates on Goodreads, I couldn't access them on my page, so I couldn't go back and like write down all of my favorite quotes of this year. If you know how to do that, let me know down below, because I couldn't find them. This book that I read this year, which I will share a picture with you here because I don't have it on me, and that is Limbo by S.H. Livernoise. During my vacation in Yellowstone, I read 8 short stories on my Kindle. This was one of them. It says it's 9 pages on Goodreads, but I swear it was like 3 pages. And it's about a man who is in limbo. He did something in his past before he died that he needs to fix in limbo, but he keeps doing the same thing over and over again. So we're left wondering whether or not he will finally figure out what he did wrong so he can move on to either heaven or hell, or if he'll just be stuck doing the same thing like Groundhog's Day over and over until for eternity. Who knows? It was really short. It made me want to read more of it, but at the same time, it made me feel like unfulfilled, you know, because it was like it started in the middle of a story and then there wasn't a real ending to it, which happens a lot in short stories and it drives me crazy. So I do like S.H. Livernoise's work. The writing style was good. Next question is, what was the longest book that you read in 2018? And that is The Wolves of the Calla. This is 714 pages, I believe. Yeah, 714 pages long. This is the 5th book in the Dark Tower series. Really enjoyed this one. This one has the cameo of Father Callahan, who was in Salem's Lot. So if you've read Salem's Lot, you will definitely recognize him in this book. Not only that, but we learn a lot about the Calla and their way of life and how Roland and the quartet help this small town defeat their enemies. Really good book. Absolutely loved this one. The book that shocked you the most, and again, I've already said it in a previous question, but these two shocked me the most. This one because it made me cry unexpectedly, and this one because it was so awful from an author that I thought I absolutely loved. I mean, I'm reading The Martian right now, and it's amazing. So when I read this, it was almost like this was his debut novel and that he had never written a book before. It just didn't make any sense. So these two definitely shocked me this year. All right, next question is my favorite OTP. I have a hard time with this question, and I had a hard time in 2015 as well. Most of my books aren't romance books, so any kind of relationship that would be in any of the books that I read isn't an OTP that I would ship. Except for this one. I just so happened to read Mr. Darcy, Vampyre by Amanda Grange in January of last year. And of course, Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy is definitely an OTP of mine. Pride and Prejudice is one of my favorite novels. And to have Mr. Darcy be a vampire on top of that is just, you know, the cherry on top, the icing on my cake. It just made this book better. It made it better in my opinion. Yeah, so I definitely ship Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. Or Lizzie. Lizzie Bennet. Okay, the next question is favorite non-romantic relationship of the year. So we definitely have Max and Dirk for the Bad Unicorn trilogy, because without Dirk, Max would never be able to defeat anybody, and without Max, Dirk wouldn't have this adventure. So I definitely enjoyed them. And then I also have Roland and Jake. Their relationship is more of a father-son kind of relationship, and in the first book we meet Jake, and Roland could care less about him, but throughout the series and all the different books, Roland has become more loving, more connected, more willing to have Jake as a son, and vice versa. He has come to really change over the books, and absolutely, like, he would die for Jake now. Before he wouldn't, but now he would. And it was just a beautiful growth between the two of them. Really enjoyed that. The next question is favorite book you read in 2018 from an author you've read previously. That is The Lying Game by Ruth Ware. Like I said, I read a lot of new authors this year. Ruth Ware, however, the last two books that I read from her, In a Dark, Dark Wood and The Girl from Cabin 10, I think that's the title, they were just okay. This one, however, was amazing. I absolutely loved this book. It's about 4 friends who go to a boarding school. One day they are all pretty much kicked out, and now we see them like 20 years later with a mystery, or the lying game. They used to play this lying game when they were in high school, and now 20 years later they are still lying, and they need to keep secret something that happened in their past. The twist at the end was unexpected. That's one good thing about Ruth Ware's writing is, for me personally, I've never been able to figure out who the killer is in any of her books. And this one, I thought I had an idea, and then it totally didn't happen that way. So I am definitely surprised. I absolutely loved this book, and definitely look forward to reading more of Ruth Ware in the future. Next question is best book you read that you read based solely on a recommendation from somebody else. And again, that is I'm Thinking of Ending Things. This was recommended to me by Penelope. Maybe not, she didn't call me up and say, hey, you have to read this book, but she did mention this a lot in her videos, and I definitely wanted to pick it up because of that. She also got me to read Every Heart a Doorway. Her and Lala from Books and Lala like talked about this nonstop, and so I definitely wanted to read it because of them. Another hard question for me was newest fictional crush from a book you've read. Now, again, I don't read a lot of romantic books, so I had to just like think of all of the male characters in all the stories that I've read and whether or not they were handsomely written. I don't know. There's the strain. We have Ephraim Goodweather, who is the main character of the story. He's also the head of the CDC, the Canary Project. So he's smart, successful. He is 6-something. He is described in a way that would seem that he's, you know, handsome. And he's a father, so he's got that going for him. So yeah. I guess I could crush him. I don't know. But the best one that I would definitely crush over is Broody McHottie because his name means everything. And back in the day, the brooding characters were always the cutest, right? They had the leather jackets. They were sad. They needed to talk to somebody. And this picture of Broody McHottie cracks me up. So those are my 2 crushes of 2018. Question number 23. Best debut of 2018. And that is By a Charm and a Curse by Jamie Questel. I gave this 5 stars. Now that I'm rethinking it, I probably would give it 4. And not because that it was an awful book, just because I think I was just overly excited right when I finished this, that I didn't really like think about my star rating yet. If you like The Night Circus, then you probably will like this because this is also about a circus. So we have a girl who goes to the circus with her friend. They're separated. She speaks to a boy in a box. The boy in the box is supposed to give fortunes, kind of like, you know, the movie Big, where the kid sees a fortune teller in a box, and it gives this little card that tells him his fortune. Same thing with this girl. She goes, but the character in the box is actually human, and they go off together after he gets off of work, and they ride the carousel, and he kisses her. And something happens after that, which is what starts the entire book. And it was really good. I really did enjoy this one. Great debut novel. Can't wait to read more from this author. This was given to me by Entangled Teen, but I think I requested this. Yeah, I liked it a lot. It's still between a 4 and a 5. Yeah. The next question is best world building, most vivid worlds. So we definitely have the Dark Tower series. This world is huge. Not only is it parallel worlds of our Earth, so we have like the modern and the historical, but we also have these side worlds that are kind of like Earth, but they're more in a dystopian type of world where the world is ending. So I really enjoyed all of that. And then we have the Gustav Gloom series, because I've never read anything about shadow people, let alone the house that Gustav lives in, and all the different rooms and the staircases were very magical and fun to read about. And the Dark Country with all of its shadow people and like characters. There's a monster that has no eyes and just chews. It kind of reminded me of the Langoliers with the chewing. If you've seen that movie from Stephen King, it's a short story. Anyways, they kind of reminded me of that. But they just chew on the shadows, and the shadows never die, but they just chew on them for eternity. That was pretty cool. And then we also have the Wayward Children series, or trilogy series. Yeah, it's a series now. I really enjoy the fact that all these different characters used to live in these different fairy tale worlds or fantastical worlds, so that was a lot of fun to read about. Next question is book that put a smile on your face or most fun to read. Some of the ones that I'm going to continue to say is definitely the Bad Unicorn series, but I also read another picture. I also read 3 of the Giant Days graphic novels this year. I absolutely love these girls and their adventures in college. This one is from volume 6. I do have volume 8 on my floor that I need to continue this year. I also really enjoyed reading Winnie-the-Pooh to my kids. I've never read these stories before, even though I've seen all of the cartoons, so that definitely put a smile on my face. And then Charlotte's Web is one of my favorite kid movies. So to read this and try to mimic the accents from the movie was a lot of fun. Question 26. A book that made you cry or nearly cry. Both of these books made me bawl. We Were Liars, I told you that was very shocking. And then The Invention of Hugo Cabret. I finished this on the very last day of the year on New Year's Eve. I read this to my children, and I wasn't expecting the ending of the book to really make me cry, and I had to stop reading for a little bit because the tears would not stop flowing. My kids were like, "It's okay, Mommy." Really enjoyed this book. Number 27 is Hidden Gem, and that is The Imaginary by A.F. Harold, illustrated by Emily Gravett. Gravett? I think it's Gravett. I wasn't expecting this book to be so good. We have a story about a look how creepy that is. We have a story about an imaginary friend. Look at the illustrations, are so cute. We have a story about an imaginary friend. We have this little girl who imagines a friend, and one day they're going to the pool with their mom, and the mom's out buying tickets, and the imaginary friend sees this man that has this guy right here. He sees this man, and the man is trying to eat him. And our girl, our main character, doesn't see this man trying to eat Rudger. Rudger is the imaginary friend. But she hears him say run, and so she's running through the parking lot trying to escape from a monster that she didn't see, and gets hit by a car, and so she's in the hospital, and Rudger is left in the parking lot because the mom goes with the daughter to the hospital in the ambulance. And if you aren't with your person as an imaginary friend, you start losing substance, like you are no longer like a physical character. You start disappearing, and Rudger has to go to this place where all imaginary friends go, to this library, and he has to find out how to reach his friend again at the hospital. And at this whole time he's trying to run away from this man too, because the man's trying to eat him. It's weird. It's a really weird book, and I really enjoyed it. This man eats imaginary character or creatures to continue to live. So he's really old, but he stays alive forever when he eats the creatures. Again, super weird, but it was definitely a gem of this year. Number 28, book that crushed your soul. Crushed my soul. That would be The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, only because it freaked me out. It freaked me out. I'm thinking, my son on a train alone with strangers? No way. No way. I couldn't imagine my son going from anywhere. Like, this boy lives in England, and he goes on this train from one place to another. Like, I think it's all in London. I can't remember, but I couldn't imagine my son hopping on a train or a bus going anywhere in California. That just freaks me out. So that was my crushing of soul this year. The most unique book I read, that would be Horror Store by Grady Hendrix was amazing. This was unique in the way that it was set up. So it's written in the style of a IKEA catalog. So you have all of these different, like this here. This is something that you may see in IKEA. You have all these furniture transition pages, like chapter pages, where it talks about the furniture, and then it says their item number, what size it comes in, the color scheme that you can get. It's so cool. The book itself, the format itself is amazing. The story within the book, it's okay. I'm keeping this because it is a unique read, and I absolutely loved my reading time, if that makes sense. Like, the story wasn't very good. It was so-so, but my experience in reading this book was great. And then we have Brooding YA Hero. I didn't really talk about this in my previous question. This is Becoming a Main Character Almost as Awesome as Me by Carrie DeRiccio, illustrated by Linnea Gear. This is a parody of YA writing. So it's kind of nonfiction because it's teaching you how to write a YA book, but it's a satire of all of the different YA tropes that you would come across while reading. It gets a little redundant because Broody talks about himself constantly, and he says kind of the same things over and over again. I do like the story itself. So we have Broody, and he's our main character. He lives in a book world, right? And the author isn't going to be writing about him anymore. So he's kind of like put on the wayside. And he's upset about it. So he's talking to all of the side characters and deciding to write a book to help them become as good as him, or close to. So side characters can also be main characters, and he shows them how, like all the different ways that you would need in order to become a main character, the different kinds of main characters, the brooding ones. It was a lot of fun. I read this to my children. My 13-year-old had a blast, and he constantly is talking about narcissism now, because that's one of the highlights of this book that he took away. He was just like, oh, narcissistic. Yes, I love that word. And he says it all the time now. It drives me crazy. And I'm thinking, maybe I shouldn't have read this book to him, because it's overkill. I hate that word now. And the last one is I'm thinking of ending things again, because it's such a slow, it's such a slow read, and there's nothing that's going on. It's just a road trip book, but not. It was so weird, and I loved it. I need to reread it again. All right, number 30. This is the last book question. A book that made you the most mad. It doesn't mean that you didn't like it, but all of these ones made me mad because I didn't like it. So all of these books are on my worst books of the year. I'm not going to make a separate video, so I will just share all of those with you and why they're on my worst books of 2018. We have here the first one, Pork Pie Hat by Peter Straub. This is my first go through with Peter, and I didn't like this book. It's about a boy who's in college who wants to write a biography on his favorite jazz musician. He finally gets to talk to the man, and he starts the interview, and the man is super drunk, and then just tells him about this one time when he was a kid trick-or-treating and what he saw. And this is under the horror category, and it wasn't horror, and it was a boring story, and the ending didn't make sense. I don't know what the jazz man saw when he was young. I assume I know what it was, but I'm not positive. It was just kind of a, I think I gave that one 2 stars, and I also gave that away. Next we have Off Season by Jack Ketchum, which I will also be giving away. This was supposed to be really good. It was very poorly edited, which took me out of the story a lot because our main character's name is Carla. They kept calling her Carta. That's a huge difference for me, and I couldn't take it anymore. Not only that, but nothing happened until almost the end of the book, which was when the cannibals started to really go at it and eat the people. It was torture porn, but not good torture porn. I didn't really think it was scary at all, so I'm giving this one away. I gave it 3 stars. Another one that's on my worst list is Fateful Place by Tana French. This is the 3rd book in the Dublin Murder Squad series. This is 3 stars. It wasn't as good as the first 2, so I had high expectations and it just wasn't fulfilled. It was just a mediocre read. Then we have Catacomb by Madeleine Roux. This is the 3rd and final book in the Asylum trilogy. Asylum? Yeah. And it was a really bad ending. I hate when books end this way. Our main characters weren't very present in the story. There's a love interest that isn't really a love interest, but they say they're boyfriend, girlfriend. It was very juvenile, and the wrap-up of the storyline was really quick. I didn't like how it started or ended to the entire trilogy. Like, if this was a standalone, it wouldn't be worth the read, and to have this as the 3rd and final book in a trilogy was really disappointing. So there's that. Then we have Corpse Cold by Brell and Sullivan. This is kind of like an adult scary stories. If you read Alvin Schwartz and his scary stories, then you would know what I'm talking about. But none of these stories were good. They were not scary. They were all, the endings of all of them were really, really lackluster. I talked about this in my wrap-up when I read this a couple months ago. It was just awful. I am keeping this because of the illustrations, and it goes really good with my, middle grade scary storybook. But the stories in here were awful, horrendous. And then we have The Turning by Francine Prose. I was really hoping that this would be awesome for a haunted house book. The house isn't haunted. There are ghosty people, but they aren't very ghosty. And our main character goes from this normal teenage boy to a paranoid, mean kid, and it just didn't make any sense, and it was poorly written. Didn't like that one. We also have Universal Harvester by John Darnell. I told you this wasn't a horror. It was awful. We have Landscapes with Invisible Hand by M.T. Anderson. I don't think I'll pick up this author ever again either. I was really excited because this is a sci-fi book about aliens, but it was really just about a boy who is poor and sad and can't keep his girlfriend and really wants to sell his paintings for money so that way they can eat. But the only person that would buy his paintings are aliens, and the aliens don't like his paintings. Lame. Just super lame. And then, of course, we have Artemis. I don't want to say that again. And then What the Dead Want by Nora Olson. Another book that I will be giving away. This is about a girl who finds out that she is part African American and that her relatives used to save black people as they were coming up, you know, to the north during that time period. And that's it. Like, it's so bad. Like her aunt used to take pictures of all of the ghosts, and that's supposed to set them free, but it didn't, and the girl is all confused, and it was just, it wasn't scary. It wasn't really that paranormally, and if she really wanted to have that whole diverse aspect of being, setting slaves free and being part African American, that didn't work well either. So it was just dull and boring. I really hated it. Those are all of the bookish questions. I have 6 more questions, and this is looking ahead. One book you didn't get to in 2018, but will be your #1 priority in 2019. And that is all of these books. I really wanted to get to all of them in 2018 for my Around the Year in 52 books. I, as you can see, didn't start them. This one in particular, I've been wanting to read for the last 5 years, and I still haven't picked it up, which is starting to drive me crazy. This might be the next one I pick up. But yeah, I want to finish all of these in 2019. This is my main priority. Two is books you are most anticipating for 2019, and get this. This is my most exciting, and I want to share a picture right here with you. That is the Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. If you don't know who Erin Morgenstern is, she's the one who wrote The Night Circus, and I thought she would never write another book. And I am happy to say this is a non-debut because obviously she read The Night Circus, but this is coming out in November. I can't wait. It's about a book on a library shelf, a hidden book on a library shelf, and that's all I want to know. It's about libraries and books. I'm so excited. Yeah, that's my most anticipated read. 3 is 2019 debut you are most anticipating, and that is The Twisted Tree. It comes out this month in January, and I don't remember the author. I do apologize, and I don't remember why I wanted to read this book again. I apologize. The cover is fantastic, but the story within also sounds really, really good too. 4 is series ending sequel you are most anticipating, and that is In an Absent Dream. I did pre-order this book. It comes out on the 8th of January. I should be getting it in the mail very soon, hopefully Friday. What today is? Today's Tuesday? Monday? Today's Monday. Maybe Wednesday? Maybe Wednesday. The next question is one thing you hope to accomplish or do in your reading life. And this year I would like to read 100 books. I've set my goal on Goodreads for 50, but I do want to get to 100. And the very last question for this survey is a 2019 release you've already read and recommend to everyone. And I don't have one for that. So, bummer, drag. I didn't pick up any new books from any publishers, so yeah, I'm looking forward to many 2019 releases though. A lot of my favorite authors are writing new books this year, and hopefully I can make a video on that. We will see, but that's it. Let me know down below if you have any of these books on your list for 2018. Whether or not I got you to read any of these books, and if you want to read these books in 2019. Let me know down below. For watching. Bye.